Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Transformers masterpiece MP-52 Starscream version 2.0. Now for those of you looking to add Starscream to your collection, he is currently available and in stock right now over at Showsy's store, and for that of course I will leave the links down in the description box below. Taking a very quick look here at the package, we've got some great product shots of Starscream in both robot mode as well as jet mode. As we spin around here to the side, you can see you've got a back view there of the jet, and here with the back of the box, as per tradition, we've got a huge variety of different product shots as well as a few reference images taken from the cartoon series, just to give a little backstory to some of these incredibly pointless accessories which ultimately just bump up the price for no apparent reason. You can see we have a scale chart here of Starscream, so for those of you who want to know exactly how big this guy is in robot mode, there you go. And here on the other side of the box we've got an image there of Starscream with a really peculiar mouth sculpt firing Megatron at what is more than likely the Autobots. Perhaps he's taking down Brawn and Prowl, but without further ado, let's take a look at MP-52 himself. So here we've got Starscream as he comes packaged in his really cool looking jet mode, and of course before we delve into the figure we'll go through some of his accessories. So of course we get the now traditional MP collector's card. This looks really awesome. You can see great artwork there of the character. As we spin around here to the back, we've got some product shots as well as some statistics, and Starscream does actually rank quite highly considering that he is more or less just a coward. As far as accessories are concerned, for this particular mode you're only really going to want to utilize these two blast effects as well as the Megatron Gun, as they are really the only accessories that can actually store here. So I'll very quickly show you that integration. You can see as we come here to the back, you've got some ports that I would recommend just very gently rotating these into. If you push too deeply, you will in fact compress the thrusters, so just extend those if that does happen, and of course repeat the exact same process here on the opposite side. And then you've got Starscream with these jet fire bursts, and I actually think these look really cool, especially with the white backdrop. And as far as integration with Megatron is concerned, you can actually come here to the underside and you can see how I've got this transparent attachment pegged onto him. This is so that you can actually utilize the included display base, which is really cool. You can simply just detach this and of course hinge this in order to lower or raise the stand. We've got some articulation such as a hinge joint here left to right as well as up and down, although the weight of the figure does actually mean that it will more than likely just flop to one side, but I guess you could just take a screwdriver and apply it to that. But we can just simply remove that here, take this transparent section and of course detach this, and then we can bring in the Megatron Gun, and you're going to want to utilize this center slot here as well as that traditional MP tab system. Peg that in there, and there you've got the gun Megatron stored on the underside there of Starscream. Not looking too bad at all if I do say so myself. Now turning to Starscream himself, I'll be entirely honest and say I actually think Takara Tomy have done an outstanding job with this figure, especially considering that some of their previous MP releases were definitely hit and miss in terms of quality. That MP Hound was a nightmare to handle, just as you were so afraid that you were going to crack one of the tabs, and to be honest I didn't actually think the quality on MP Optimus Prime, the 44 really expensive version, was all that great either. However, here with Starscream I haven't really found any QC issues at all. All of the plastic feels very well built, the figure is really nicely painted, which can be a downside and of course a positive. It looks fantastic, very animation accurate, but of course can chip incredibly easily, although I haven't really chipped him that bad during transformation just yet. You can see that as far as the detail is concerned, the nose cone looks great. You can see we've got some nice interior detail, so if you have any of those old smaller Diaclone figures, I believe they are, you can definitely pop them in there. We've got a nice purple seat there which looks pretty decent. Of course you've got some nice detail here on the top. You can actually take this section and angle this to the back, and you can see we reveal some nice detail, which is just a really nice added bonus. I do love how Takara do most of the time go all out on these MP figures. They include things that you would only really see in one specific episode, and I really think that's a great attention to detail. You can see here from a bird's eye perspective, we've got quite a decent amount of sculpt work. You'll see when we get him into robot mode that he is very toon accurate. It's mainly just smooth plain surfaces, which I don't have much of an issue with, but in jet mode there definitely is quite a lot of panel lining detail, which I think looks quite cool. You can see here for the wings, Decepticon insignias, really nice pinstriping with the white and the red. All of this section is painted as well, so you do have to be a bit wary of the blue as well as the grey. And you can see here from the underside, it does clean up pretty decent, probably the best you're going to get considering that there is just no way for you to distribute these parts without majorly compromising the look of the robot mode. But I actually think this is really cool. You can see you've got the missiles here on the sides, and there are actually a few ways that you can store them. So if you're not a huge fan of having this armature here, you can actually detach these from the underside of the wings and then just remove these. We can then take this, snap that there into place, and then just compress all of this, utilize this tab here and snap that into the underside of the wing, and just for a comparison, you can see this is without the armature, and then this here is with the armature. I do personally prefer this look, as of course it is a little cleaner, but for those who want to keep this figure in one coherent piece, then you will definitely want to utilize this particular attachment. You can see the intakes there have got some nice sculpt work, which I think looks quite cool, and the actual missiles themselves are really interesting, but we'll go more into that when we cover transformation. As far as some other features are concerned, Starscream does have landing gear, so you just want to raise this section, pop this piece through, and then of course collapse that, come here to the underside and repeat the same process. So hinge these sections open, as well as these tiny flaps, and then I would recommend tilting him upwards so that these can flip out, and then you're just going to want to apply some pressure and snap them there into place. It does require quite a bit of force, which can be a little scary, but believe me, this is how it is intended to lock into place. So just do that there, collapse these sections down, and then you've got some landing gear for Starscream, and he can actually roll along the ground really nicely. So overall, I think it's a solid looking jet mode, really nice attention to detail, especially with the opening cockpit, the opening front nose cone, and the landing gear, and I also like the versatility as far as the missile storage is concerned. Seeing as we need to transform the missiles for robot mode anyway, I thought I'd just quickly show you how you can actually use the blast effects. So in order to transform them into the null rays, Takara actually did put quite a lot of engineering into this, so you're going to want to hinge this section out. We can then take the front tip of this, rotate this all the way in, and then collapse that down, and then that will reveal a much more elongated looking blaster, of course, to match his null ray appearance. And then we can bring in some of the other blast effects and of course just house them over the top. I wouldn't recommend pushing them on too firmly, as of course you may damage the paint, as I do believe this section too is also painted, but they do fit on there really snug either way. And you can see you can have the null rays blasting the Autobots, or in some instances Megatron and the Decepticons, but that too is also a really nice display feature. Transformation for Starscream, unlike pretty much all of the previous MP figures that we've got released besides RC, the transformation on this guy, once you've done it a couple of times, is actually really straightforward, and I was really happy about that. As of course, masterpiece transformations can be very tedious and can take literally anywhere between half an hour to an hour. However, here with Starscream, I believe you could probably get it done in a roughly 10 to 15 minutes, just depending on how cautious you are. So to begin with, of course, if you've got the landing gear out, you're just going to want to collapse all of these back into their respective spaces. So just snap all that into place, of course. Compress all of this. I personally do actually like removing the null rays, just as they can become really finicky to actually manipulate and get out of the way, but believe me, you can convert him with these still attached. So just take these here and wriggle them and set them off to the side, and then here for this section you're just going to want to rotate and snap into place. We can then turn our attention here to the top, and I would recommend starting at the back. You're going to want to take this section and just essentially lift this up and then detach this section. Of course, come here to this side, lift this up. You can see how it is held in by this tab and slot, and then of course just dangle these pieces down. We can then take this entire back region, and I would recommend just very gently prying this section down so that you do actually utilize the ratchets in the hips, just so that you can manipulate some of the wings. What I would then recommend doing is turning our attention here to the front, taking this section, hinging that out to the side, and then rotating this all the way up until it does actually click into place. We can then take the cockpit, lift this section up, and then actually collapse that seat in, and just leave this here like this for now. We can then come to these pieces, pull them out slightly just to detach some of those tabs which are overlapped via this middle section, and just hinge these up ever so slightly. You're then going to want to come here to the arms, lift these up, as these two are also held in via some very small slots and tabs, and then we can actually bring these out to the sides and then hinge them down, just to allow for some additional clearance when you're folding the wings in. Of course, spin your attention here to this side and repeat the exact same process. So hinge that out and hinge that section down. We can then turn our attention to these sections, rotate this here until it clicks into place, and of course repeat the exact same process. You're then going to want to lift this up and of course lift this section up as well. I would then recommend hinging this section out slightly, folding this component in just like that, and of course come here to this side and do the exact same. And then here with the wings, you're going to want to angle this back and then angle this flap. So there are two hinges, one here and then one here. So bring this section in, bring that section down, just like so. We can then come here to this section, open these up, and this was a really nice attention to detail. Takara have actually completely sculpted and in some instances actually painted the interior of this, which is something they didn't have to do, as all of this is going to become covered by these blue pieces. But that is so awesome, and once again just really gives me masterpiece vibes. This is exactly what I expect from an MP release, unlike some of those most recent movie masterpiece figures that sadly are just not up to par with these G1 and Beast Wars figures. So come here to this side and of course do the exact same. We can then take these pieces here, and you're just going to want to collapse them in, collapse that in, come here, collapse that section in, And of course, this section, we can then come here to these wings. You're then going to want to push that in, hinge this down, and then of course just collapse that section along, just like so. Hinge this section out, and you can see we've got a huge slot there that this tab is in fact actually going to fill. So bring that up and over, and just align that up appropriately until it clips into place. Of course, come here to this side, so bring this up, compress that hinge joint there, and then just hinge this up until it does snap there into place. Now what we can proceed to do is hinge all of this down. For now, we can then come here to these sections, hinge those up and over just to allow for some clearance, and you're actually going to want to detach the nose cone from this particular piece. That will then allow you to hinge this section down just like this, and then collapse, and you can see we've got some slots that these tabs here will peg into and snap really securely into place. We can then turn our attention to the legs, which is personally what I like to do. I prefer starting with the legs, then begin working on the upper torso. So for this, of course, you're going to want to snap these sections apart. We can then come to this section, and you're going to want to pull this out and then out to the side. We can then take the foot, and this slot is in fact going to fill that tab. So bring this down until it does click into place. We can then hinge out the shin pad. And then here, you're going to effectively want to break this. So apply some pressure and just snap that there and fully extend the leg. Really nice engineering on this particular component. We can then hinge this section out, and then we can hinge this out, rotate this here, and then fold this up just like so. Push this back into that cavity, and of course, lock that there into place really securely, ensuring, however, though, that the shin guard is pulled all the way forwards. We can then take this knee section, shift that up until it clicks into place, and of course come here to this side and repeat the same process. So hinge that out, come here to this, lock that into place, bring the shin guard out. We are then going to want to snap this section, bring this down, and then here with this you can shoot this down as well, rotate this around. We can then rotate that upwards and snap all of that there into place, and shift the knee up until it does lock into place. Now, moving to the top of Starscream, this is where things can become slightly convoluted, although to be honest with you, this isn't all that complex either. So you're going to want to detach this section, rotate this section so that the front is now of course facing the back. We can then come to the nose cone, detach this particular region. You're then going to want to take these pieces and just fold them forwards. We can then hinge at the cockpit, and then you're going to want to shift this in there until it does look something along the lines of this. So once everything is compressed like so, you're then going to want to hinge the body up, and this is where things can become slightly finicky. You're going to want to pull this section out, and then there is also an inner layer that you're going to want to fold out. This will effectively just basically fill out the torso. Of course, come here to this side and repeat the same process. So hinge that out, and of course drop this section down as well. What we can then do is take this entire region, pull this forwards, and then effectively you're going to want to shoot this up. So apply some pressure until this whole region here does shoot up, and you can see how that will fill out this entire region. We can then compress all of this. You can see here with the wings, you're going to want to put these tabs into these slots. So snap them into place, and then of course we've got this tab and this slot, so you're also going to want to snap that there into place. Come here to this side and repeat the exact same process. So snap that in, snap that section in. We can then take this tab and shoot that there into this slot. So snap that into place. This back piece will come over and will more or less just rest there. Come here to the front, and you can really begin to see Starscream taking shape. You're going to want to take these, which for jet mode are pushed forwards. So you're going to want to bring these back, and you can see how we've got a tab that will peg into this slot. So just snap that in there, and of course snap this one there into place as well. And then here at the front, there are also some tabs and slots that you'll just want to clip into place. We can then come to the arms, fold the butterfly joints in, and of course do the same here. This section we previously transformed earlier on in the review, but there is actually a locking mechanism that prevents this from detaching, but we'll cover that in articulation. Bring this section down, hinge out the wrist, rotate, and then of course snap that there into place. Come here to this side and repeat the exact same process. So rotate that around, snap all of that there into place, hinge all of this down, make sure that everything is locked in nice and securely, and then we can bring in the null rays and of course just port them into the same slots that we would have utilized in jet mode. So as mentioned, you can definitely keep them attached to the figure. I just want to make sure that I've got the pins facing towards the back. So snap that one in there, come to this side and snap that one in there. And then you've got MP-52 2.0 version of Starscream fully transformed up into his incredibly impressive, incredibly solid robot mode. And I'll be completely honest and say straight away at the beginning of this robot mode segment, there really isn't all that much to dislike about this figure. I actually think in fact that he's probably the strongest masterpiece figure that we've gotten from Takara Tomy since MP-36 Megatron. This guy is super solid, super articulated, and pretty much looks exactly how he did on the cartoon series, even down to the colorization of the paint. Honestly, he looks excellent, super solid as well. You can see that as far as the detailing is concerned, the head sculpt is fantastic, very reminiscent of what we actually got with the MP-44 Optimus Prime. And when we got that head sculpt, everybody knew that Starscream was certainly on the horizon. This looks so awesome. You can see what appears to be almost intakes here on the side of the head. The paint for the faceplate looks excellent. Of course, he does come with alternate pieces, which we'll showcase later on in the video. You can see we've also got these intake sections here on the top, which I think look really cool. Everything on this figure is pretty much painted, and the actual torso region, so this entire plate here, is die cast, and I also believe these sections too are die cast, which adds a great sense of weight here to the top of the figure, which is really awesome. You can see that as far as the null rays go, they look great, really nice looking sculpt work. As mentioned in the jet mode, here for robot mode we do get a lot of smooth surfaces, which is of course animation accurate, but I know some of the previous MP figures did just add detail for the sake of it. I personally don't really mind either way. I think this guy looks excellent, very accurate to the animation. You can see here for the cockpit, this is in fact faux, so this is not the cockpit that you'll utilize in jet mode, but I think the colorization on this looks fantastic with this almost brownish copper that we've got going on. Of course, we've got these sections here which all look great. I think this looks really smooth, very accurate to the show, as so do the thighs. Here for the shins, we've got some nice paint, as pretty much all of this is grey paint with those blue highlights, and I actually think the feet too have turned out really well. And here from a side perspective, you can see that he does compact really nicely, especially considering how much actually goes into the wings. That is great compression, and even from the back, I actually don't think it looks too bad at all. So you can see here, we've actually got some nice details, such as the paint that's carried over from the jet mode. I just think overall it looks excellent. The finger detail too is really nice. All of these are individually articulated, which I believe this guy is one of the first MP figures to have every single finger on its own hinge joint for a very long time. So I just cannot really fault this guy. I just think that he's really well done and looks super cool. As far as articulation goes, Starscream does have a great amount of articulation here at the head. So we do get a ball joint, which can of course look up and down as well as left to right, and it can also rotate left to right. But we also do get an extending joint here, which allows him to look all the way up, which is fantastic, as well as down, and you can actually disengage this neck piece in order to make him look down even further, and of course you can use that to your own personal desire to get some really expressive motion out of that head, which is superb. The arms in themselves are just amazing, especially where these butterfly joints are concerned. So the butterfly can hinge up and down, as well as can of course hinge forwards and backwards, and we can also utilize the actual shoulder ratchet joint as well, which when utilizing both of them allows for an amazing amount of articulation. Here we've got ratchet joints going forwards and backwards, we've got rotation here at the bicep, we have a single joint here officially at the elbow, and this can bend slightly past 90, pretty much a double range of motion on a single hinge. But if you wish for it to curl all the way up, you can actually detach the transformation joint here, which will more than likely become detached anyway, and really get that full curl, which is superb. The null rays themselves are really articulated, so can definitely move out of the way in order to accommodate for some of those more dynamic poses. So these can rotate all the way around, as well as can be extended, so you can shift these up and down. Of course, we've got a rotation here at the wrist as well as a hinge joint, and as mentioned beforehand, all of the fingers are individually articulated at 2 points. I'm not a huge fan that the thumb is permanently fixed. I would have loved to have actually got on a rotation so that we could have hinged this section round. I'm almost certain there was a specific reason why they decided against this, but I have found the thumb to look slightly awkward in some poses. Sadly, no form of waist rotation due to how he transforms, but he does have an ab crunch, so you can crunch this here forwards and backwards, and sadly this particular hinge joint is very loose on my copy, but you can see how that can crunch quite a bit forwards, and I love the way that this section actually stays attached so that the backpack is constantly connected to this lower piece. Of course, we can then crunch that forwards. The skirt can hinge out of the way in order to allow for the legs to kick forwards on really nice ratchet joints that far, as well as backed about that far before they become restricted. Of course, we get soft ratchet joints here out to the side, so he can do the full splits. We get a rotation here at the thigh, past 90 here on a single ratchet. Here for the foot, this can pivot forwards and backwards, as well as rock side to side. Not the best range of motion due to the nature of the design, but certainly not bad by any stretch of the imagination. And the wings, sadly, are not that articulated, but considering that past Starscreams had issues in regards to them becoming detached too loose, I can completely understand as to why Takara, for the most part, made these fixed. They can hinge forwards and backwards ever so slightly just to allow for a little bit of a dynamic flair when posing this guy, but other than that they can't hinge up and down. So overall, articulation wise, I also think that Starscream here is one of the best articulated, especially as far as that engineering goes. He looks really coherent in pretty much any dynamic pose. So accessory wise here for robot mode, you saw earlier on that we do get the Megatron gun. The detail on this is actually really nicely done. I love the gunmetal used here for the main section of the gun, and of course you've got the silencer as well as the stock here. You can extend this in order for it to actually fit into the hand, so that's really cool. And just to demonstrate that, you will have to have it at a slight angle, but you simply just want to push the index finger in first and then collapse the thumb down, compress that in, and then just wrap the fingers around. And there you've got Starscream utilizing Megatron in order to take down some of the Autobots. We also do get some blast effects, so we can put this here on the front. I personally think this smaller one works the best here for the Megatron gun mode. That looks really cool. Or you could actually take this larger one here and peg that in there, which is really awesome. We actually do get some different arm attachments. So for this, you're going to want to basically transform the hand back into its jet mode configuration. So rotate here at the wrist, collapse that down, which will then ultimately expose this tab. And we can bring out this drill piece, which has been detailed and actually completely painted in a nice gunmetal. So you can just snap that on there. Could be a little bit of a pointless accessory. I don't really recall Starscream utilizing this that much, and this accessory certainly is very pointless. So this is like an almost claw-like weapon. This attaches in the exact same way as the power drill, so just snap that on there. And then we get what I believe is like a cosmic rust rock. This simply does just become grasped by the claw. It's a nice inclusion. Would have I lost sleep if they hadn't included this? Absolutely not. I do think this is a little pointless personally, but the drill piece is pretty decent. As far as other gimmicks goes, we can actually take these chest pieces, hinge these up to reveal some rockets, which is fantastic. Really nice looking detail, and you can see this has been completely painted, as so has this top section, so that's really awesome. And as far as faceplates go, we get this neutral face, the classic Starscream laughing face, a really sneaky sinister smirk, this incredibly expressive shocked face, or as I like to call it, the Megatron pleasuring face, as well as an angry sulky Starscream face sculpt, and then finally probably Starscream's signature look, a really expressive smirk. So I guess the previous one that I called a smirk was more of a smile. Some other things to note before we actually get into the size comparison: Starscream does also come with another additional blast effect. This being really long, this can also be pegged onto any of the null rays, and you can actually take the null rays here, detach them from the arms, fold down this particular section, and have this act as an actual blaster for him to hold, which is really nice, and it's something that once again they just did not have to do. Size comparison wise, here we've got Starscream compared next to that MP-52 Megatron, looking absolutely fantastic if you ask me. I've seen some complain that Starscream may be a little too short, however I actually think the scale is near enough spot on. Here we have him compared next to Shockwave, and then finally for the core Decepticons, here we've got him compared next to MP Soundwave. One very final thing to note before we wrap up this review: you can actually turn him to the back, take that same transparent stand adapter that we utilized in jet mode, port this here in, and you can actually utilize this for robot mode. So we can bring in the included display base. You're going to want to extend this until it is fully extended as far as length is concerned, and then essentially just port this here into the back. Personally, I don't really think this works all that well at all. The stand is way too small for him to utilize in robot mode. I guess you could lift the legs up and get some form of dynamic pose. Personally, I'm not entirely convinced as to what you're going to get out of this, but just note that this is definitely something that you can do. And so, some final thoughts here for the all-new Transformers masterpiece MP-52 Starscream 2.0. Overall, I actually really like this figure. As mentioned beforehand, some of Takara's previous MP figures have been a little lacking as far as quality control and actual materials are concerned, but here with Starscream, I think that he's one of the best. As mentioned, I think he's probably the most solid MP release we've gotten since that really awesome version of Megatron. I think the jet mode really does look fantastic. Nice sculpt work, really nice features such as the opening canopy as well as that front nose cone section. We've got really awesome landing gear. I do like the integration with some of the blast effects, the different ways that you can actually store the missiles. The transformation is nowhere near as complex as I expected, which is fantastic. It's actually quite fun to do once you do get the hang of it, and it results in a very animation accurate version of Starscream. This is no doubt out Takara's best ever Starscream and is the best official version of G1 Starscream that you can currently pick up on the market. I love how he looks. The articulation is fantastic. It is exactly what you would want from a Takara masterpiece. You can get this guy in pretty much every single pose, with the minor complaint of there not being any waist joint. There is really no pose that you can't get this guy into. I think he comes with a great array of accessories, whilst some, as per tradition with Takara, may seem a little pointless. They are a nice inclusion, and I do like the nice attention to detail, such as the actual sculpt work that we've got in the back of the wings that you only really see whilst transforming the figure. I like some of the nice features, such as the lift up chest panels, which do reveal some missiles, and I really like how you can actually add some of the blast effects, and it's super cool to get a great variety of different face pieces. The entire figure is also completely painted. I'd say he's probably 90 or 95% painted, which, as mentioned in jet mode, can be a positive and a negative. Considering he's completely painted, he looks great, but he is more prone to chipping than if they were to use just normal cast plastic. But I personally haven't really found any instances of really bad chipping, and if you just take your time and take caution when actually handling this figure, it shouldn't be an issue at all. So with all that being said, this guy certainly does get a super high recommendation from me. If you are looking to add him to your collection, he's currently available over at Shozy Store, and of course I'll include the links down below. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.